In this video, we're going to be talking about how to embed images in our HTML page and also how to use divs, which are basically, you can almost think of them as like little invisible boxes that hold our content. And later, whenever we're working with CSS, we'll be able to move those boxes around. So first, we're going to talk about images. So underneath my unordered list that I made in the last video, I'm going to hit return, and I'm just going to type in img. Image. That's the image tag. I'll hit return, and it's going to pull up some of the defaults for this. So we have image, and then we have an attribute called src, that stands for source, and then we have an attribute called alt, which stands for alternative text. So how these work, the source is going to be pointing to our image file, and the alt is going to be a piece of text that we can include where people that are using screen readers can use this to essentially read the image to them. So I have an image right here called newmountfuji.jpg, and notice I've copied it into my project folder. You can do this just, on Finder or on Explorer. You just copy and paste it into your project folder. Everything within HTML needs to be relative to your HTML file, so that means it needs to be next to it, or it could be in a folder. So for instance, I'll make a folder and call it images, and within this, because we're going to basically tell the computer or the web browser where to find this image on your computer or on your server in the case of an actually hosted website. So I have this src, and it's going to be pointing to this images folder, and then within that folder it's going to be pointing to newmountfuji.jpg. So I'm going to type in images / so this is saying there's a folder called images. Within that folder, I'm going to find a file called newmountfuji.jpg. And look at that, it's already popped up over here. And then we want to give it some alt text, so I'll say a print of Mount Fuji, something like that. So again, no one's going to see this alt text, it's just there for people that have screen readers. Now something you might have noticed is that this image tag, this image element, doesn't have a partner closing tag, right? Before, everything we've used, such as unordered list, has a closing partner. H1, closing partner, H1, P, closing P. Even our inline tags, such as B, have a closing partner. Image, with HTML5, which is the newest version, I mean, it's been around for quite a few years, but is a self-closing tag, meaning we don't actually need to have another little tag at the end that says /image. We're fine with just having it all in one. You might have noticed that with our meta tag as well, we have the same kind of setup. So we have our image, and it's quite large and sort of impressively massive in the middle of our page. So we can resize this. There's actually ways to do this within HTML, but what we want to do is in our next video, we're going to use CSS to resize this image. But first, I want to actually encapsulate this image in a div tag. And the div tag is a little bit more complicated. If we go to our HTML elements and we find the div element, you can find more information about it. So the div doesn't really represent anything. Instead, it's used to group content so that it can be easily styled. So for example, in this case, they have a div tag with a class. This is a CSS class. Again, we'll get into that a little bit later. That is holding this content within it. So it's holding this image and this paragraph content all at once in this div tag. So we're going to use this div element to basically create a little box that holds our image. So I'm just going to tab this in once and do a div, and I'll do a /div. The reason we're doing this will become more clear later whenever we make a CSS document that we're going to style this div tag. But for now, the div is just basically a little container, an invisible container to hold this. If you go look at existing websites, they're full of div elements, just constantly use divs within divs within divs to basically break up and kind of categorize and group all the content on the page.